a year ago, I went down to SWAT, and there was a gentleman named Kelvin Burton who lives in Van, Texas, but he's originally from New Zealand, and he demonstrated doing what they call a Manta Ray Bowl, which is this with, this particular one has 3 wings up and 1 down. So he did a demo on that. I found it real interesting, and then Sammy convinced me to do this demo. So I've practiced this a little bit, but I'm still learning. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do today is this. Originally it was created where Kelvin found out about it was from Terry Scott, who's also from New Zealand. And if you haven't seen any of Terry Scott's work, Google him. He's got some nice stuff. He does really, really good work. Really interesting. And anyway, so the information I have, and I'll send this to Gerald. It's a Word document to demo something. It's nice to have somebody explaining what's going on. So Larry is here a lot. He helps do that. So if you don't want to turn, just come on down and just see what's going on. But if you want to turn, we do simple stuff. They do a lot of tops because they can do them pretty quick, and they can do it while a class or a group is watching. So they just do these little tops, and then they sell them for $5 each because you can't give them away. Because if you did, every kid in the world would want one, and you couldn't keep up. No, and then you'd have upset kids and parents. So just to keep it nicer, we sell them for $5. So, but it's a good experience. You get a lot of adults through too. We've actually had several members that that's where they first saw us, was down here, and that's how they found out about us. So that's good. Only other thing we've got, my brain dead there for a second. The Craftsman's Guild, as I mentioned last month, the club was juried in, so we have access to that now. I was actually down there last Saturday. They had Christmas in September, so I was down there doing demos down there. I think Brian Hill is down there today. I sent out an email to everybody. There's several events coming up for them. October, I can't remember the date, late October 28th or somewhere around there is their annual members banquet or gathering. I'm not sure what they called it. Okay. Yeah, so everybody in the club is welcome to go down there. The dates and time were in that email. If you need it again, just call me or send me an email. I'll get it for you. I will not be there. We're going to be out of town, but I would go if I was. Then there's Chimneyville, that if you're interested, you have to. Christmas in September to go down there and demo, we don't have to pay for that. That was just a demo day. They have a demo day coming up in October too. First weekend, I think, or second weekend, where they'll have people down there doing demonstrations. You don't have to pay for those. Chimneyville does cost for a booth, and I think the minimum is $275. But
I think we can get the entire wood shop, which is 400 square feet, and for $175.
$275. That's what they told. Now it's $175. Let me know, because they told me $275.
I think we can get that down, but that would be coming out of the club's.
If the club wants to do it.
And you can, and you can demonstrate here in Chimneyville, you can sell your stuff here in Chimneyville. There's not a commission back to the guild on those sales. So it's a good thing. I mean, you get a chance to get exposed to a lot of people who were coming with the express purpose of shopping for Christmas.
Yep. Actually, yeah. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll coordinate it with the guild.
You can also get access to the shop itself if you want to have a class or just use they've got 5 jet mini lathes there. Just need to coordinate it.
Yep. All right. Anything else? All right. a year ago, I went down to SWAT, and there was a gentleman named Kelvin Burton who lives in Van, Texas, but he's originally from New Zealand, and he demonstrated doing what they call a Manta Ray Bowl, which is this with, this particular one has 3 wings up and 1 down. So he did a demo on that. I found it real interesting, and then Sammy convinced me to do this demo. So I've practiced this a little bit, but I'm still learning. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do today is this. Originally it was created where Kelvin found out about it was from Terry Scott, who's also from New Zealand. And if you haven't seen any of Terry Scott's work, Google him. He's got some nice stuff. He does really, really good work. Really interesting. And anyway, so the information I have, and I'll send this to Gerald. It's a Word document. He can put it on the website. This is basically step-by-step instructions from Kelvin, on how to do these. I emailed him and asked him for permission to use this, and he said by all means. He only asked that I send him a picture. So if you get some pictures sometime today, so I'll email him back. But that was all he wanted, was just a picture of the demo, and he was happy for me to use it. But it's really good instruction. I will cover as much as I can, give you some hints and stuff, but this is a really good resource, and we'll get it out on the website under the resources. So, yes, sir.
This is one of the sweet things about going to a symposium.
Yes.
You get to see and learn so much. It's important.
It is. As I keep saying, I go see a lot of the demos. There's stuff that I would never really want to turn, but every one of them you pick up some information, some hints and tips about turning. Every turner will give you some little bit of information you can put in your toolbox for later. Sammy and I went to see Derek Weidman, who, if you Google him, he turns these animals on the lathe, multi-axis, so he's constantly moving it. And he starts his demo by asking you, what do you want me to turn? And I think ours, it was going to be dragon. So he kind of sketches out the general idea on a board, and then he goes from there. Unfortunately, when we were there, the power went out, and all the 220 in the building went out, so all the lathes quit working, so we didn't get to see him finish. But even that was how his thought process. We would have learned a lot just watching that, even though I'm never going to do anything. I don't have the capacity to think out of the box like he does and to visualize how you move it and it's going to look. But just all the information you pick up, and the vendors there will just, you drool over everything. So, in fact, we had 2 that got the scholarship this year. Kevin and Clayton were our scholarship winners. And next month, they're also going to get up and they're going to talk about their experience there, which is part of their deal for getting the scholarship. So, and like I said, Clayton's actually going to do our demo on the wands next month. So, all right. So this is a piece of cherry. You want some you want solid wood. You don't want anything that's real punky. As you'll see when you start turning this, you see these wings that stick out. And that's one thing right away is be careful. These corners get sharp as they're spinning. And you're turning a lot of air, so you have to take real gentle cuts. You want sharp tools. The biggest problem is these corners chipping off, or the edges, so you need sharp tools and light cuts. But just watch that thing spinning around. I don't. Some people do. What he's talking about is putting tape out here, so a little piece that sticks out. That way it'll hit your hand before the corner does to make you aware. But you're also cutting into the side, so you can't leave it there the whole time. Yeah. So this is a 6x6 by 2.5 inch thick. If you do, you can go thinner, but if you go thinner, then you get a little bit different shape. This was, I think, maybe 2 inches or maybe a little bit less. So is all you can do it. It just changes your style a little bit. And this is walnut with some gold leaf in it. As I told some guys earlier, the reason the gold leaf is in there is because where my center point was here, and then I hollowed it. I got just a wee bit thin and had a little pinhole there that you can't see now.
You didn't even have to say that. You could have said, I did a perfect job.
Yeah. But anyway, I like the contrast between the walnut and the gold. It actually turned out nice doing that. So, like I said, just this is what he uses, what I'm using, and it kind of gives you a good size, and especially to practice. What I've got, you want to get it as square as you can. If you don't, then your wings won't be the constant thickness. Things will be off center. Your distance, on the edges in will not be symmetrical if you don't have square. The other thing is drilling that hole as close to the center as you can. So take your time drilling it. I found myself, I do a little pilot hole first before I use the larger bit. It doesn't wander as much, so that helps kind of keep it centered. And then I've got a screw center here. This actually will fit in my chuck. Oop, gotta get it right the first time. So this one came with a Nova chuck. It's made to go in there. So it just goes in, and then there's some flats in there, so you kind of got to rotate it around until you feel it kind of lock in. And then have a small spacer here. Just gives it a little more surface area for this to ride against. So to start, this will end up being the top. So we're starting on the bottom. Come on. I drill my hole probably a little bit smaller, but I've also had them too big where they've slipped, and so I'd rather have it a little tight. And then I just, yeah, get it on there good and snug and make sure it's flat against the chuck. Okay. So I will start forming the bottom and the wings, and we'll go from there. Yeah, I think that'll work. Make sure I got enough room here. You can't do the whole thing with the tailstock up, but I do start with it up. I also want to get a little center mark there for when I turn it around to help align it. But this will also help keep it solid. But like I said, I am not going to leave it there for most of the time. Can you still hear me? Yeah? Since I'm going to be turning air here at higher speed, for something like this works better. You'll hear it when I come off. You can tell when you're coming out into the air. All I want to do is just kind of flatten this right now. And then I'll start coming in, stepping it in a little bit at a time. And this next cut, you'll hear me turning there. A little bit. You may not be able to see it, but when I'm up here, I can see the shadow of where I am. What I want to do is you can do these a couple of ways. All of mine sit on a base. You can actually have it sitting on the wings. I have not done one of those, but you can do that. But because I'm going to be sitting on the base, what I'm going to have to do is turn these up a little bit so that these are not going to be touching the ground. So I'm going to do is go in a little bit more. I'll set up the base for my tenon, and then I'll come back and make sure that these are not touching on the bottom. I can go ahead, if you'd like, I can pass these around.
Where you get the gold leaf?
Tim Pace, one of our club members. Actually, you can get them. You can get that. That's metal leaf. It's not really gold. It's gold colored, but you can get it at Hobby Michael's. I don't know if Hobby Lobby does it or not. Michael's has it. That's the only thing I've ever done with it, and I did a lot of research online and read a lot. And it's not difficult, but it's tedious.
Is that the sheets that you get?
Yes.
Have you ever used gold rub and buff stuff?
No, I have not. Those are sheets, but they are so super thin that you look at them and they flake apart. It's crazy. It's,
The wax is not going to give you the same look as the
fake gold leaf.
I can't even say it. It's too expensive.
Oh, that was nice. Depending on how much you come in here, your curve in here, as to how much of a curve your wings will have. These are kind of gentle. You can come in sharper. It's going to change how it looks and everything. The one with the walnut's pretty shallow because that was a narrower piece. This one's fairly shallow also. It just depends on what you want, how you want it to look. But I'm getting out close to this edge here now, and this is getting a clean cut along here so far, so I'm not chipping out. This is some pretty dry cherry. A friend gave me this wood, and I don't know how long it had been around. It was his dad's, and he passed away several years ago, so I think it may have been kiln dried too. Make sure you wear a shield. As you notice, I'm looking down over this. I'm right above this, so if something chips off, it's going to come right up in my face. Make sure you have your face protection on. Because I can't stand back here and see as well as I can straight down. So you can hear that bouncing a little bit. Yep. Makes a good fan too. You can see it blowing the sawdust around. Well, it didn't sound good, but it didn't chip out. Nope, that's just, so that's good. So I'm going to pull the tailstock away now so I can get in there and start forming the bottom and make sure I'm getting up and off of the wings are off the bottom, so they're not going to sit on the wings when I'm done. Make sure you spin it before you start it. Be real careful when you get in the bottom there, especially if you're not inside the air. See, I'm just barely in right here now. Thank you. I'm finally learning. A little bit high. I'm going to go ahead and mark my tenon. So I can cut it. Probably want to go in a little bit more here to give it a little more width there. See how my foot's doing here. Can you go to the overhead, Gerald? And zoom out a little bit. There we go. You can see, well, back out a little bit more.
That's it.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Well, I guess, which way am I turning here? That way. There. I got it now, I think. You can see the gap here. So there is a little bit of a gap. Well, no, it's on the wrong side. This way. All right, there we go. Well, anyway, I'm trying to figure out here because it's backwards. It's on the top, but you can't see it. There we go. Right there. So that's how far that point's going to sit off if I don't do anything else. So I'm going to come in and raise it up a little bit more, and then I'm going to probably come in a little bit more on the foot here. I found when I do this, when you're turning the air, there's hardly any resistance on the tool till you get to solid wood. So I have a real hard time getting a smooth cut without moving the tool too much. So I try to lock it in as best I can on my body, but it's still a little difficult for me. I'm just going to do a little bit of a pull cut in here just to smooth that out.
Bill, is it as easy to get a catch in that corner as it is sitting with me?
Is it easy what?
To get a catch in that corner as it seems
The,
to be?
the bottom corner?
Yeah.
It can be, you have, as you notice, I'm coming both ways here, kind of working my way. You can see here I didn't get a real smooth cut. That's turning that air. I just have a real hard time keeping that tool in there. Like I said, the higher speeds help. I did come back, I got a little bit of a ridge there, which is a little hard to see. I don't know if blocking the light helps block the light, not the camera. A little bit of a ridge right there. So I'm going to try to clean that up. I'm going to come back in here and try to clean this. I do actually scrape these wings, but very, very light with a very sharp tool, very slow, and it does smooth it out. You'll see later you don't have to worry about it a lot being real smooth because you're going to do a lot of sanding later. That is one thing that this does take a lot of sanding to get this finished off. Still a little bit of a ridge. Which I can get rid of with a scraper, but again, I'm always aware of those wings. And you'll feel the air up here. It makes a pretty good fan. So I got to move that to... Where's the switch on that? The reflection on the tool, I can't see what I'm doing. So I'm going to turn that off for a minute. And just very lightly. Still a little bit, but that'll sand out. little bit of tear out right there from the scraper, actually, not from the cut. So I was better off before. See if I can get rid of a little bit of that. All right. This is a little ripply, so I'm going to try to smooth that out a little bit. This is actually a box scraper, but it works well. I'm only going to do some real light scraping in here. A lot of starting and stopping of the lathe. Well, none of the corners have chipped out yet, so I'm doing good. That's a lot smoother. Again, I'm going to be sanding, and some of those are going to probably on the bottom. Actually, they'll have 3 of the 4 are going to go away. So I'm going to check, make sure I'm still off. I'm just going to come in and form the foot a little bit, not completely. Now his, and in the instructions that I'm going to post online, he actually does feet. He actually carves away and makes feet. I've done one that, or maybe 2 that way, but I did not really enjoy. If you look on the bottom of the walnut one, you can see actually has the feet carved, and that's the way he did most of his. I did not really like that much. Didn't like doing it. So I just do more of the traditional foot on that. So I'm just going to smooth that out just a little bit in there. All right, I knew it was here. Those of you that saw Rory's video on his point tool, you can just use that to come in if you want and put a few little rings on there. You know, I take my skew, just make sure I've got a square corner there for the chuck. So that's the basics of the bottom. You can sand in here some on the lathe if you want. You just really watch those corners. I would, you come in this way, you're not going to sand out here with it on the lathe. That's going to have to all be done off the lathe.
Can you talk just a minute about putting 3 feet on the bottom of it?
Okay.
Don't have to do it, just how to, I don't understand how to even start.
And Sammy, you've probably done this more than me, but I think basically what you do is hollow this back out and here some and leave a ring, like from where that circle is out. And then when you get done, then you mark your thirds and you have to carve away and round off to make the foot.
Carving, that's the secret word.
Carving, yep. Or a lot of sanding. But yes, you have to carve it away. I mean, you can use a Dremel, you can use a power carver, whatever you have, but you do have to sand it. So before you turn it around, you actually do the V cut inside like this. So this is where we are at this point right now. Actually, that matched up pretty good. Just coincidence. So next we're going to cut these V's. And to help see this edge, I'm going to take a marker and draw on here. I still have a little difficulty seeing it, and I look more at the shadows. Now, if you're really good, and what he did was he just took that and he just drew it by, excuse me, by hand going the other way. I am not that good at drawing and getting it, so I take a piece of manila file folder. Lost my pencil. Thank you, Ed.
That looks like yours, doesn't it?
What's that?
That looks like yours, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it is. No, actually, there's mine right there. I knew I brought it, I just didn't see it. You know, it's amazing how your tools disappear when you're up here doing a demo. Is that true, Sammy? Or at home. Yeah. So I just lay this on here, corner to corner, just because, like I said, I am not that good at this. And I can't hold that down either, so I take, just to give it some backing, and then I can run the pencil in there. To get my curve. If I put it where it belongs, I'll probably find it next time. And then cut. Yeah. Well, it's normally in that pocket on my shoulder, but it does fall out sometimes. And this, what I'm doing is just making a guideline. This isn't going to be, you know, definitive where it has to be right there. But now I can take this and line this up and come back and mark. Now, you want where this joins, you've got that width right there. That's why I use a wide marker. So I'm actually going to bring this curve out right to the bottom of that. And you want these corners up here to be below this outside edge so that your thickness there is going to come up. So you have to be down slightly to make sure you're not, what I'm saying, you don't want it up like this to where that corner, it's not a real good shot, is it? There. You don't want it above, it's not going to work out. You have to be below that corner here. And that thickness right there, so I come all the way down to the bottom where that's right at the edge. And then take this, like I said, Calvin just did this by eyeball and came out pretty good. I'm not that good at drawing an arc and trying to match it to the lower one. Even that's not real good, but that'll work to give me a guideline. And this is actually the hardest part of this, is cutting that in there. And again, you want to make sure you're clearing that corner. And every time you need to move that tool rest, you better stop the lathe or it's going to jump. Now hopefully when I start this back up, I'll be able to see that shadow of that. There's different ways you can do it. I actually do start it with a skew. using the long point of the skew. If you're good, from what I hear, you can go all the way down with it. Obviously, I don't go all the way down with it. Again, you want some high speed. One other thing I just saw, these, I did not see, you go overhead, Joe. You can see some sand marks here where I ran this on my belt sander. Excuse me, actually that's bandsaw marks. You don't have to worry about getting that perfectly smooth right now. Trying to sand that 2.5 inches is a lot harder than trying to sand when you get it down and you're only sanding that little bit there. And that'll get rid of all your tool marks. So you don't have to worry about having this perfectly smooth. Squareness is more important. So this is going to be fun. I'm going to attempt to get this going, and I'm just started doing this the other day when I was practicing, is trying to find basically the center of this just easier when it's spinning, just to kind of give me a guideline of where to shoot for. Actually, that's too high. I want down here. Just to start my cut so that I can try to get it symmetrical both ways, you know, where it comes in. So I can see, I don't know if you can see the shadow. No, well, you can see a little bit of the shadow of the mark right here. Well, it's actually on this side. A little bit of the pin mark right there. You can see a little bit of black. So I'm using the long point. I'm going to come in, try to hit the center. And this is where it gets noisy too. And just start a V-cut. Well, there went one. Actually, 2 of them went off. Have not had that happen. So.
That's not a part of the day.
No.
Yes.
No, those are 2 wings I'm going to carve off. Actually, that went too deep. So.
Got a design opportunity there.
Yeah, I do. Well, it goes all the way. It chipped all the way to the bowl here. So it's probably not worth it.
Can you make the bow smaller? Take those bottom wings off, turn it around, make
Keep going, it ain't no
just keep going.
Yeah, we'll see.
He was being good to y'all, he did ask to have a shield.
There was a reason for that. All right, we'll see what this design opportunity provides. I've had some chip, but not like that. All right, so we'll see how that works.
pre-cut.
I'm sorry?
It's pre-cut.
Yeah, save some time later, right? All right. Like I said, we'll see. I was probably doing a little hard. this one just does not want to, woo. Well, you got to cut in. You can't really cut with the skew going out. So it may be, though I did a couple of them out of this. But I do have we have a drill, right? All right. I did not.
This is really dry. You can feel it.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you mark off
Wing.
contours and all and then V right there before we ever did anything?
He probably could. Ed asked if he could mark this and cut the V. I'm not good enough to keep the tool where I want it, so it wouldn't match up.
Yeah.
You could probably do that.
I mean, you got more ass, Larry, you got more.
This is true.
You will always use a skew to start cut in the middle there.
I started with the skew, and then I was going to go on. I'll show you what I used to finish, if I can get that far on this one. All right, let's see. That's the first one I've had do that out of all these. I've had some little chips, but I've not had one break off like that. All right, I'll see if I can get back where I was pretty quickly here. Let's see. I couldn't really see this, but I'm going to try. Maybe a little gentler cuts this time.
Do only 1/4 at a time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what happens this time. I'll be a little gentler. I think that was part of it. I got in too big of a hurry. I know you guys, I don't know if you can see it maybe looking this way, but I'm actually looking up here. It's easier to see my cut than trying to look down here. So I've got a start on it. We'll see if I can go. Like if you're good with a skew, you can do this all the way, but I'm not that good. I just try to get it started. And I'm having to watch the shadow down here to pick up that cut. And kind of working back and forth. I'm trying to keep that point in there and ride the bevel slightly. And follow that curve going down to the bottom. And I think I'll call that quits with that tool for now, while I'm ahead. Now this, Like I said, this is the hardest part of this. You can see I still have quite a ways to go. This is a spindle gouge that if you notice how well you can see that, it's fairly sharp point. And I did that so that when I come in, I can get in there. Let's see. Yeah, right there. You move, okay. So I can get in there deeper with that to try to get down in there. But this is a fairly thin, because I wanted it small, so it's not real solid. And by the time you get down, you're overhanging that tool rest a little bit, so it gets quite a bit of vibration. But it's actually a little bit easier than the skew, because it's typical, you know, just like you're doing a cut on the face of the wood. As I'm coming in, I'm bringing the tool rest up to kind of get that point down in there. Actually switch sides here. As you can see, you got to work back and forth to get down in there. You can't just do one side because you can't get deep enough. Just light cuts, move your tool very slowly. So I'm getting a little bit too far down in here, so I need to take more off this side because I'm aiming for that point down in there. So I need to take more off this upper, well, what's the bottom of it at this point. And I also need to start coming in more here and not so much towards the bottom. A lot of starting and stopping of the lathe. That's getting better. What I'm aiming for, the hardest part, is to keep these wings a consistent thickness. Either end up too thick at the top, too thick at the bottom, too thin. It's difficult to try to get it a nice smooth cut. And again, I'm hanging over quite a bit. I can't move the tool rest any closer though, because I'll be hitting the corners. So just patience. As you see what can happen when you get in a hurry. I'll pass this around. It's just a grind I put on there, kind of pointy. It is a spindle gouge, but I needed something to get in there. I didn't want to go back. I get too nervous with a skew, especially getting that deep. I've been starting to V that way, mainly practice. You could do the whole thing with that, but I want to get better with the skew, and using that long point of the skew is always a good thing. There's a lot of things you can do with that long point. And really all you're doing is just like on any spindle, you're just cutting a V. All I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of that little nib right there. And then I'm just going to put a little dot back in there like I did on the first one before I broke it. A little high. And I was looking for my point tool again. I was going to do another couple of grooves there. Now for cutting in there, somebody else may have a better idea of what to use than what I did with that. That's a Doug Thompson, I think that's a 3/8 inch spindle gouge that I'm using there. And it works for me, but there may be something easier. If somebody has a suggestion, I'm all for it. Because there's lots of different ways to do it. I had this on this chuck just because it's a little bit bigger base than the standard jaws. These are a little bit larger, so it kind of helps support the wood a little better. And when I get ready to reverse it, depending on how I turn it out, I may need the bigger jaws to reverse it to finish the foot by chucking in here. So I'm pushing on the center of this. I don't want to try out here because I might cock it, so I try to get dead center. Push that in to keep it square on the base. And I don't want it flying out. And hopefully there won't be any pieces flying out. So now, what's that, chuck key or what? This is going to be basically like I was turning the bottom. Important stuff. I lost my coffee cup. So I'm going to do basically the same way I did. There is some chip out right there. So what that does, it helps me determine which wing I'm going to cut off. So that's how I determine which way they go. Which wings look the best. Just hit this. This is just a diamond card. I can just hopefully get it a little sharper. It's starting to dull. I've got another one. One side's 300, the other's 600. I was using the 300, the 300 side. This has got a little bit of an inclusion in here, and hopefully it does not go all the way down. We shall see. But what I was talking about before, you can do the overhead, Gerald, on these wings, the marks here, you see this edge of this is below this corner. If it was up above, then your corner is going to move in as you cut this away. So that's why when you do this upper curve, you want to be below your point there. Another point, some areas to watch out for. This one, I screwed up. I'm trying to remember now what I did. I think I broke a wing, so I started over. So that one, to me, that wing, it's okay, but it's way high, this section. Trying to be in the center, but it's too high because I had to go back and redo it. So that's something to watch out for. Try to center it on your bowl. All aesthetics, it's what looks good to you. One thing you really want to watch for that is easy to do is I'm coming in here You don't want to get too thin. This is a flying one, see, it flaps. So, be cautious of how thin you're going there. What I started doing is I try to come in and put a little bit of, when I get there, just kind of flatten it a little bit instead of coming in at so much of an angle. But this was really soft wood. I was going to come in one last time to clean it up, and it was cutting. It's oh shoot, sweet gum, I think. Who was it asked about doing the foot? Is that Gary? I was going to actually do a foot on that. I'll pass it around. You can see I kind of laid it out to get the points for the feet. I'd have to go back and figure out how I did that again. I don't remember exactly, but I just kind of put triangles on there and just to kind of figure it out. So now I'm going to smooth this out on the top.
If you just use the radius to mark off,
Yeah.
that gives you 6 equal quarters.
I'm a little bit high. I don't want to reach in there while it's running. It's one thing hitting a round bowl. It's another hitting the square. This also is good practice for if you just want to do a square bowl. You don't have to do the wings. The wings are kind of a step above. So if you want, you have not done a square bowl, just start with a square. And just turn a bowl out of it and leave it square. They look cool. And that works. So you can do that. And that kind of gets you into the practice of turning a square piece. Get that back out of the way. I'll get my elbow piercer out of the way. So I'm just going to do the same thing here, like I did on the top, just start working in. By the way, this is a Doug Thompson half-inch bowl gouge, what we're raffling off next month. He makes some great tools. You can see I'm kind of stepping this down because I want to make the bottom meet the top here the same diameter. I don't want it narrower. Now you can do, like I said, you can do it with an open bowl like this. You can do the enclosed. Either way, whatever you like. I mean, whatever you want. This kind of, because it was narrow piece, just kind of flows a little more. That's more of a bowl. This is more of just a, I don't know, gentle curve. It depends on what you want. And what I do, because I'm not that great at eyeballing, is to get an idea, is I use the dividers here to get that bottom radius. Or at least close to it. Try to get it in there. And then that way I can see on the top. See, I'm not down there quite yet. So that's what I'm aiming for. But I have a long ways to go on here, so I want to start stepping this out. And then I can come back and clean it up to match the bottom. Okay. Need to go down a little bit more. I'm having a real hard time seeing my marks now. So I can see more of the profile of it looking down. So again, I stop and start a lot to kind of see where I am. Looks like I need to come down maybe not so much on the outside, but a little bit more on the bottom. See, I actually got that, I think, a little bit thinner than the upper, but yeah, I did. You can see that's thinner there than there. That's what I was saying is hard, and it's a little bit thinner there than out here, but it is what it is. You know, I'm not going to try to go back on the bottom and take any more off. It's just better off leaving it. If I had done a better job probably drawing these lines, I probably could have done a little bit better. That is, again, the V and that's the hardest part, is getting them symmetrical. So check and see how I'm doing on my diameter. I got a ways to go in. So I'm going to start bringing that in. Hello, who is it? See. Yeah, I got it. That's real close there. But I got a little bit of lip, so I probably went a little bit too far up there. So I will match it back up as best I can. Kind of hard to see. It may be a little bit narrower on the top, but I think I'm going to call that good and go from there. So now I'm going to start hollowing it. What time is it? Okay, we're doing good. I have not done it, but you could also make one with put a lid and a finial on it. All depends on what you want to do on the top there. You know, lots of design opportunities. I'm going to pass this around so you can look at it and kind of see how he did his. And again, I'll get a copy of this to Gerald to put on the website, but you can thumb through that if you want. He puts a ring around the top of his, a bead rather. You can leave it flat. You notice I've done some beads on mine. It just depends on what you want to do. These were just 3 grooves around there. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do on this one. Probably just round this off a little bit and maybe do the lines instead of the beads this time. Just kind of leave that a little flat. And hollowing depends on what you have, what you guys like to use. I've got the Easy Wood hollowers. I've got some other stuff. For this, I found this works pretty well to get up in here and hollow it. If you're going to do one like this, the walnut one here, it's much easier to hollow. You're not going up doing the undercut. This makes it a little harder. But the Easy Wood really does work pretty well. It cuts it out pretty quick, does a good cut when you have your sharp. New cutter on there makes a difference. I'd hate to get this far and then go through it. Again, none of us have ever done that, right? All right, so the top is pretty good. I'm going to start coming in a little bit more. It's a little, to me, it's the hardest part is getting up under here. I want to set my depth with my fancy depth gauge here. Really fancy one. Kind of see where I am. So that actually is probably about the depth I want, about maybe a little bit over 1/4 of an inch. So you can see I've got quite a ways to go on the depth. And then the thickness here, obviously still have a long ways to go. It gets real thick right there. So I've got quite a ways, but want to check frequently. I also have the one for undercutting there. So it is. It's also. If you have one of these or new turner, don't put the tool rest back here. You want the tool rest. Figure out which way I'm going here. Yeah, back on this flat. If you put it up here, the pressure of the turning will flip that like that. On this flat, it'll hold it it doesn't give you the twist. So that's why my tool rest is back, so I can get on that flat. What's nice is they do cut either direction. This one's not as sharp as the other one, but it's still doing pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and take some more out of the bottom.
Just that one more cut.
Yeah, actually I feel probably close to an inch thick on the bottom. By the shavings coming out, you can see this cut's pretty good. It takes some pretty good cuts, so I don't want to go too long before I check it again. Yeah, see, it's still got quite a ways. Getting close, so I'm going to stop that for right now and concentrate on this section in here. Doesn't want me to lean over, does it? See how I'm doing. And it's still pretty thick right there. And thick on that side of it. So I can keep going. I am not going to go all the way with this. Save a little time and show you. The Easy Wood tools cut like crazy. You have to be real careful. You go through in a heartbeat. But because on these, that diameter is so small, it's easy to get ridges in there. So,
Carbide's flat, or are they at an angle?
these are flat. The Hunter tools are more of a cone. They actually kind of, you can ride the bevel, I think. I bought these before I learned about the Hunter. These actually are replacement tips from AZ Carbide. They're not Easy Wood. I think Easy Wood is slightly different looking. Now, he asked if they were flat. So we actually, I think, we had some AZ Carbide tips in there that was the gentleman sent them. Was it Ron Campbell that owns that? They showed up in the mail to the club. So we're going to raffle those off. They may or may not, there's a variety of sizes, so there may or may not be some that fit your tools. I don't know. Because depends on what brand you get, what cutter, what tool you have.
Easywood is making a negative rate carbide now, but still it's a scraper, and Hunters are cutters.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
This is Robert Sorby hollowing tool. You got the overhead. And it comes with different cutters on it. You can angle it. This is just a round scraper, but I like it because that's about 1 inch in diameter, and it'll smooth out any rust, or not rust spots, but any undulations, or however you say that on there, any ripples. That too. No, I won't fix all the screw ups. It helps. Again, this one is a gooseneck, so you want it off. You don't want it up here. This hole here is straight in line with a shaft, and that's where your center is, so that's why you want it off. But this is just a scraper, but this little scraper here, I'll tell you, cuts like crazy. It does a really good job. I could probably do the whole thing with it.
The smaller carbides, I won't say it's impossible, but it's practically impossible to get a totally flat surface when you're hauling. So that's why you use the bigger scraper to smooth it out.
So you'll see this one will, when I come in here, it will cut. And I got a little bit sharp in that corner there, so it's not quite the same radius. You can see it takes some pretty good shavings too. I've got it up under my arm because I'm hanging over the tool rest trying to steady this to keep it cutting flat. Trying to round up under there to get kind of rid of that kind of a V shape I had in there. That's pretty good. I'm going to take a little bit out of the bottom now. I'm going to move this a little bit. Yeah, but it'll also tear. So it's just better if you can take lighter cuts. This one you can actually sharpen. The carbide ones you can put flat on a card like I've got and maybe get a little bit of edge back. This one I can actually take to my grinder. I made a thing where I can screw it down on there and hold it up there and just rotate it to get that edge. And it's just a negative, well, it's not a negative rake, it's just a scraper. It's not negative rake. Oh, heavy on my cut. This is why I did not go all the way down earlier, because I wanted to scrape this and try to get a smooth finish in the bottom. Got a little bit of a nib in there, a little bit.
If you keep the tightener up, it tends not to grab.
Right. Well,
Get below center line, it's gonna.
yeah. And I am above center, just slightly. Got a little bit of a nib in there that I'm gonna try to get rid of, and then a little bit of a dip in the center. Actually, I'm a little low because I'm not hitting it center real well. A little hard to see in there too. Light's not the best. All right, I'm going to call that quits. I'm going to probably leave this on the chuck so I can finish this more at home. But to get to the hollowing is, I mean, if you've done hollowing, bottoms of bowls, this is basically the same thing. You get the wings here now. You have to decide if you want one up and three down, two up, two down, what's the design you want. I have been doing three up and one down. I like that look. I guess I could turn that over. You can see, to me, it looks better that way. It just depends on what you want. So again, what I do is I go in there and I look at which ones are chipped out, which are the best wings, and that's the ones I save, and the chipped ones I cut off. So this one's coming off. I see a chip on it. And so I don't get confused. I put tape on there. And actually that's chipped on both sides, so now I got to decide which one's worse. Probably the upper wing, so that one will come off. So as long as, well, that one's chipped too, so I did get a couple of chips, so let's see. Yeah, this was some pretty dry wood. That chip, yeah, I think I'll take this one off, the first one I was looking at here. So that's the one wing that's going to come off the top. So that means this one's going to be saved, and then these other three will come off.
This wouldn't be a Greenwood project, I would guess, would it?
Probably not. You're going to get a little different. You'll get a lot of warp. Well, I mean, if you might try it. I mean, it's going to warp, so you may want to try it. What's that?
Well, it might curl the corner.
Yeah. So take these off. It's just a rough cut with a coping saw. Unfortunately, this is not locked, because what I normally do is I'll lock it and then cut, and this does not stay locked. So let's see if I can do this. So I put the tape on the ones I'm taking off. So just going to come in. Try not to get too deep, which I started a little bit. Now, I don't know how you normally put a coping saw blade on, but I've got it, it's a pull cut on this. So now, one of the back ones. Oops, that's not going to lock in the right position, so I guess I'll just have to hold this. Well, I can get it. Thank you. Well, at least it didn't break when I was turning it. Yeah, this is a lot brittler than the other cherry I've been using.
Yeah, I had a raw cherry that was a raw, and some of it was powdery, and some of it was not. So
Yeah.
it can be the same piece.
And these ink marks here, the felt marker I use, that will sand off. So, you know, if you're worried about marking that, don't be, because it will come off fairly easily with a little bit of sandpaper when you're done to clean up those edges. So you can see you're going to be sanding this, grinding this off and sanding it. So that's why I wasn't really worried about the very bottom of that V there. Whew. Try to score that. Maybe it'll, if it chips, it won't chip past there. Yeah. Well, yeah, that does play into it. I mean, this is the cross grain, right, or the long grain's running that way, so it is going to chip out easier there. So, all right, I'm going to take this off with the chuck, and yeah, the bottom needs a lot of finishing there. There's several ways you can sand these, take them down. I mean, you get the general shape here. You can see what it's going to look like. You can do it, if you take your time, you can cut closer if you're good with a saw there. Or what I do to rough it off, you can do this with the Fordham. You can do it with a Dremel. You can do it with sandpaper. If you've got a power sander, or back, like I said, you can put it on the drill press, and it works really well to sand those down. If you use some 100 grit or even 80 grit sandpaper, it'll take it down pretty darn quick.
Hey, Phil, I noticed usually you have 3 up and 1 down. You ever done it with 2 down, 2 up?
I have not. You can do that. I mean, you can play around with it. I like this shape, but there, I mean, you can do any combination of what you know. Try it however you like it and see. Like I said, I just happen to like this shape, so that's what I've been doing. Yeah. Wrong box.
You know, we decided we can't afford to come here anymore, because every time we come, we see something we gotta have.
Well, the Fordham is nice, but again, you can do it with sandpaper, you can do it with a Dremel. I mean, it's whatever you have. Yeah, grinder, yeah. So this is a pretty rough burr here, and it takes it down pretty quick. It really helps if you plug the tool in. Funny how that works, huh? Get that down there in those, get a spark down there in those wood shavings. Does that work good, Chief?
Yeah.
This is actually an old one. I got this at an estate sale. So I'm not, you know, I don't know how it compares to the newer ones. It's got a lot of vibration in the cable, but it works. So I'm just going to see if I can hold this where you can see it, and kind of looking at this curve here. Now, I'm not trying to get it all the way down because this is too rough. So I'm just getting it close. So from there it'll be sandpaper. So then I turn it over, same thing. Normally I do this with what's called a power cap, my powered respirator on, or at least the dust mask. You can see the dust gets quite a bit. I don't normally do this holding this like this either. I usually have it set down I'm sitting down on a bench because I got a little deep right there because I'm a little bit wobbly doing this. Try it down here, get a little better control. I'm going to not take these all the way down because you can see the process there. So I'm going to change this out. I've got, again, easiest thing would be to take it to the drill press with a disc on there to sand it. It does. You start out, like I said, like 100, 120 grit and work your way down. It goes pretty quick. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have really good control. He was saying you support it with your arms. You get really good control over it. Yeah, spindle sander may be a little bit small, you know, round, but it would work. It depends on what. Well, you got okay, the bigger one. Yeah. I don't want to turn the lathe on. This is a piece of sandpaper. It's wrapped around, and then it goes in. It's got a little tube to hold it in there. Again, this is something that came with this, but this will smooth it up. This is 220. Speaking of sandpaper, there's that bag of sanding discs back there again. If anybody wants them, take them. That just tore. The whole thing came off. Oh well. It's got a little tube in there. So I'm not going to bother. I've got another piece, but I will pass this around. You can see, not sure how well you can see that. You can see here it comes down. Again, I got this a little thin, that's a little thicker. I can sand it down and get that to match up some. And then right here it's thick, so when you come in here, you're going to also sand all the way so you get a continuous flow through here. That's what you're aiming for. And again, on the sandpaper, it will take it down quick. I do have a little bit of a chip on this corner, I noticed. I don't know if I hit it after I got it off. I didn't notice it before. Again, this is very chippy wood, but I'm gonna leave this on there because I'll rechuck it when I get home. So, past that. Yes.
It might not make a lick of sense, but if you took a piece of wood like this that was super dry and kind of porous, could you soak it with some thin CA glue? Would that do it?
You can. I mean, you can. He was asking if you could take porous wood and soak it with CA. If you want to kind of stabilize it yourself, it just takes a lot of super glue. Yeah, you can wood hardener. Minwax makes a wood hardener that helps some. You can buy stabilized blanks. There's a lot of ways, but
Or you can just get really good wood.
yeah,
Life's too short.
life's too short. Don't turn crappy wood.
Ugly wood.
Yeah. So something like that. Yeah. So any questions on that?
I think you came up with a heck of a recovery there.
Yeah, because I had another blank. But again, you know, the things to watch out for, like I said, is when you get in
That's pretty cool.
here, watch how thick that area is. Here's another one I brought just in case. There's one that I did at home. I've marked the wings I'm going to cut off, but I have not cut them off. So just showing you a few different ones. So this is another one that's, again, I've taken and I've sanded it some more than the other. We'll pass these around. So you can kind of see the process. You can see on the bottom here, that one's not sanded, it's just been cut. And then these have actually been sanded for the most part. So you can kind of see the process. So, anybody remember what this bowl design's called? Manta Ray. So I, playing around, decided I was going to make a Manta Ray. Not sure it came out right, but where do you want it, Gerald? There's my shot at a Manta Ray. So,
Looks just like it.
well, kinda. Whew. So, any other questions, comments? Who's going to bring one next month? Come on now. You bring the pieces? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody want to borrow the pieces? I think this is going to become a bowl.
That one may turn out to be two down and two up, opposite each other.
Yeah, it may just end up as a bowl, an unwinged bowl. But it, you know, I watched that demo and I was really intrigued by it. I had seen these before I saw that demo, and I was like, how do they get those down and up? And it was like, oh, once you see it, it's like, duh, it's really simple. Well, it looks simple. But it is a challenge, as you can see, and it's probably not a bad thing that I broke those wings, so you can see some of the stuff that can go wrong, and why it's important to have a face shield. Yeah, obviously, Sammy, obviously, yeah. Yeah. And I think I was trying to get in too big of a hurry and take too big a cut, so I think that's what happened. Just trying to force it in there too much. But anybody comes up, I'd be really interested to hear if somebody has an idea on how to get down in there easier than what I did. That tool works, but it is a little thin, but I don't want to go any thicker because then it would be too thick to get down. Again, you don't have to go all the way. You can do a lot more grind.